It's just the old, I don't know.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
We're still working with the sound in the boardroom, so give us a second.
Oh, there's still an echo, Carl. You let me know when we're ready to begin.
Someone needs to mute their device.
Okay, yeah, we're still getting an echo.
What they need.
Yeah, it sounds like it's your computer.
Yeah, turn your volume off on the device.
There we go.
Punishment is you have to stand in the rain for 5 minutes.
Okay. Make my hair grow.
And everyone, evacuation orders are going in place for Pajaro, Arroyo Seco, and Carmel River as we speak.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
Chair-
thank you, Supervisor, for that information. So are we ready, Carl?
We are.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. We obviously it was a last minute decision to be able to have some of this meeting conducted remotely due to the storm events that we're experiencing. So for precautionary reasons, thank you so much for the last minute change. And thank you for those that are joining us in the boardroom, and Happy New Year, as was said earlier. So this is again, the meeting of the Monterey Salinas Transit District Board of Directors, and today's date is January 9th, 2023. During today's meeting, the public has several options to participate. You can join in person in the board conference room. Members of the public are required to wear a face covering and adhere to the social distancing protocol. So as was said today, due to the weather events, we're just discouraging non-essential travel. You can also join the meeting via Zoom. The meeting ID is located on the agenda, but for today's meeting, it's 845-0083-6234. The passcode is 652252, or you can also join via telephone at 1-669-900-6833. So at this point, I would like to call the meeting to order at 9:03, and we will begin. So I'll turn it over to Jeanette for a roll call, please.
Okay, City of Carmel by the Sea,
Here.
City of Delray Oaks, absent. City of Gonzales,
Here.
City of Greenfield,
Here.
City of King,
Present.
City of Marina,
Here.
City of Monterey,
Here.
City of Salinas,
Here.
City of Sand City,
Here.
City of Seaside,
Here.
City of Soledad,
Here.
and County of Monterey.
Present.
Thank-
you. Have a forum.
Thank you, Jeanette. And I think I skipped over. I think we're going to do the swearing in. Apologize for that.
I need to call, sorry, Chair, I need to call City of Pacific Grove. We have our alternate here.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's go back to item 1-1, which is begin to conduct the swearing in of the new board members. So at this time, I will turn it over to Carl.
Certainly, and we have today joining us from the city of Monterey, Ed Smith, who was been the rep on the TAMC board, so many of you may know him. And we have a newly elected official from the city of Marina, Lisbeth Vischer. Both Mr. Smith and Ms. Vischer did have the opportunity last week to get a brief orientation on MST and go over the agenda. So with that, I do not have the swearing in paperwork here in front of me, but I think we're going to throw it up here onto the screen so that our folks can read it. There you go. Thank you. It's not an eye test. If you repeat after me, I, and then your name.
I feel like we should be
No,
standing.
I'm sorry, please stand. Thank you. You know, I don't do this very often. So please stand, hand over your heart. I, your name.
I, Lisbeth Fischer,
I, Ed Smith,
Do solemnly affirm
do
solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I
That I
will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will bear the faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
That I
that I
will
will
bear
bear true faith
faith
and
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you. You are duly sworn.
Thank you.
Welcome
you.
to the club.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations and welcome. And also thank you for your public service. So welcome, Councilmember Smith and also Councilmember Lisbeth Vischer. We're excited to have you on our board. Okay, so at this time, then we conducted roll call already. I don't know if we need to go back to that, Jeanette, since are we good with? Okay, perfect. So then we'll go ahead and move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. And at this time, if I can have Councilmember Fischer, if you can lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. And at this time, it's review highlights of the agenda. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Sidorik.
Thank you, Board Chair Velasquez. As is typical, we attempt to have very little business on the MST agenda for the month of January so that we can conduct a workshop to provide an update as to where the board or where we stand year to date with our action plan and strategic goals, as well as to discuss emerging issues that are challenges for MST. So with that, on the agenda, you really just see our usual resolutions for recognition. We have a claim that we're going to reject on consent. We do want to go to closed session and have a conference with our labor negotiations with regard to our MST EA Administrative and Staff Support Unit. And then on the action items, we're really just want to take some action based on the outcome of your closed session meeting. And then We'll have a discussion about our March meeting and the new regulations on AB 2449 and staff's recommendations on how we will begin conducting meetings in March once the state of California lifts its COVID emergency, which we anticipate at the end of February. And then we'll conduct a strategic planning workshop with 4 items as listed on the agenda. So hopefully we'll have plenty of time for some robust discussion to provide staff with some direction and some thoughts as we start preparing for next fiscal year's 2-year budget and action plans today. So this is the first step of our budgeting and planning for the next fiscal year, is really conducting this workshop and getting some of your thoughts on where you want to see us over the next couple of years on some of these important items. That concludes my review of the agenda. Anna, are you muted?
Okay. Yes, I am. So I have to remember that, right? We've been doing this for how long?
I thought I stunned you into silence.
Yes, no, thank you, Carl, for providing the highlights of the agenda. And this is an opportunity, and we wish we would have been all in person, meeting in person, to be able to have some robust discussion and just have some more of the interaction. But I'm hoping that even within doing it virtually, that we can still have some discussion on some of these important items and really look at some of the updates that are coming before us as well. So at this time, I'll move on to public comments on matters not on the agenda. So any member of the public may address the board of directors on items that are not appearing on the agenda. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Please be brief and to the point. The board may not respond immediately, but we may choose to be able to direct your concerns through staff. So just as a reminder, if you are joining us through Zoom, please make sure that you use the raised hand feature that's up on the bottom of your screen so we can unmute and recognize you as well. So at this time, let me do first the board. Anyone in our boardroom that has public comments and matters not on the agenda.
We do not have anybody present from the public.
Okay, so then thank you, Carl. I will take it out now to our Zoom to see if there's any members that are joining us via Zoom that'd like to make any public comments and matters not on the agenda. And I don't see any hands raised at this time. Okay, so given that there is no public comments, then we'll move on to.
We do have a member of the public with raising her hand, Ms. Eddie McGregor.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, Ms. McGregor, go ahead.
It's Miss Eddie. Eddie is the last name.
I'm sorry, Miss McGregor Eddie. I'm sorry.
Miss Eddie, thank you. I wanted to inquire when transportation will be available to San Jose. It's impossible right now. If there's a way to get there on public transit, I've been unable to find it.
Okay.
That's my question.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And so we'll obtain your information, Miss Eddie, so that way we can get you that and staff can get you that information to see what's available. Okay. So I don't see any other public comments at this time. So we'll move on. Thank you. So we'll close the public comments on matters not on the agenda, and we'll move on to consent agenda. At this time, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. So I'd like to ask any members of the, any directors that'd like to pull any items on the consent agenda for additional comments or discussion. Okay, seeing none, I'll take it out to the public. If there's any members of the public that wish to pull an item from the consent calendar for discussion or comment. Okay, seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to approve items 3-1 through 3-4.
Carbone, move or second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Director Worthy and second by Director Carbone.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So can we get roll call, please?
Okay, Director Barron,
Yes.
Director, Worthy,
Yes.
Director Martinez,
Yes.
Director Labar,
Aye.
Director Fisher,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director, Peduri,
Aye.
Director Barrera,
Yes.
Director Carbone,
Yes.
Director Pacheco,
Yes.
Director Velasquez,
Yes.
and Director Alejo.
Aye.
Thank you, the motion passed.
Perfect, thank you. So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is our closed session item. And today we have one closed session item, which is 4-1, conference with labor negotiations, government code 54957.6, MSTEA and MST. And we will move into our closed session at this time.
Madam Chair, before we adjourn, public comment on the closed session.
Oh. Thank you for that. So any public comments on our closed session item, which is 4-1 for today? Any members of the public that are joining us in our boardroom? Okay, any members of the public that are joining us via Zoom? Okay, seeing none, then we will move into closed session at this time. And so for us that are on Zoom, we just stay on our Zoom, correct?
Correct, and you'll be invited into a closed session workshop. For those here in the room, we will adjourn to our closed session meeting room.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Did you have a good holiday? Yeah. Good. A good break. How about you?
me real quickly, and then we can, talk a little more broadly. So if you want to go to the next slide. So I'm the chair. I'm a senior program manager with HDR. I've been, I think, on the leadership of this committee for 4 or 5 years now. I know that the COVID time kind of made things
I didn't see that last night.
Thank you. We don't have a city council meeting until 7:00.
3451.
Vacation. And my son was taking a vacation for Christmas, and I went down to Iowa and got stuck in Denver. Wow. How long? 1 day. Oh, yeah.
His bags, I guess, what,
He's back now, yeah.
and his baggage too?
The baggage actually made it with them.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they didn't get caught up with losing anything.
Okay, Carl, do we have everyone back?
We're waiting on Ms. Carbone, the vice chair, I believe, took a comfort stop. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'll be on standby when she gets back. Carl, I think we can proceed, correct?
We have Ms. Carbone has just entered the building.
Okay, great. So thank you, everyone, for your patience as we recess to closed session. And now we return from closed session, and I will turn it over to our legal counsel, Mr. Michael Laredo, to do a report out on item 4-1.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. The board did meet this morning in closed session for conference with labor negotiators under Government Code Section 54957.6 regarding the MSTDA contract. They did have a general discussion of the proposal that's on board, and this is set for action under item 7-1. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, which at this time now is recognitions and special presentations. We have 3 of those for today. And we'll start with item 1, which is our January 2023 Employee of the Month. And I will turn this over to Mrs. Andrea Williams.
Good morning. It is a great pleasure to recognize Lori Lee as January Employee of the Month. Lori began her career with Monterey Salinas Transit in January of 2017 as an accountant, and was also recognized as Employee of the Month back in August 2018 for her positive contributions to MST. More recently, Lori has played a critical role with the implementation of MST's new accounting system. Her strong technical skills, combined with her strong accounting background, dedication, and cheerful outlook, have been instrumental in the success of MST's completing this project. Additionally, Lori has been an important participant with the HR payroll system implementation, and so much more. Lori continues to be a valued asset to MST and the accounting department, and is a pleasure to work with, and has once again exceeded the expectations of the accounting department with her dedication and supreme efforts. I'm pleased to be a part of recognizing Lori for her outstanding performance at MST.
Chair, staff will
Yes.
provide Lori her pen and her plaque and her check when we see her next. I believe she may be working from home today, given the weather conditions. So she's not here in the meeting today.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you. I just, want to just be, I know you'll see her again, but please.
Lori is on. I'm sorry, Lori is on the meeting. I just see her.
Oh,
Lori, do you have
okay.
anything to say or as part of this?
This is the first board meeting I've ever attended, so I didn't know if I should speak or not, but I really appreciate this honor, and I was surprised to see it, and I'm just excited to work with the people at Monterey Salinas Transit who've been very supportive of everything I do, and yeah, I've enjoyed my work here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Lori, thank you so much. But we're happy that this was that you joined the board meeting And we're happy to hear your comments. And I just want to say thank you, congratulations for your commitment and dedication to providing, based on the report, external and internal customer service. So also thank you for your successful implementation of the new Microsoft accounting system. And thank you for doing it with a cheerful manner. I know a lot of times we get assigned tasks and we're not always cheerful about it, but based on what we received in the report is your dedication to MST, but also your dedication to doing those critical assignments and being able to do those in a cheerful way. I think it speaks volumes of you and who you are. So congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate this, and it's nice to see you and to see the board members. I'm just very grateful. Thanks.
Thank you. And board members, directors, I'll open it up if there's anyone wants to make any comments at this time. Okay, see.
Madam Chair, Barrera
Yes.
here.
Go ahead, Director Barrera.
I also want to say thank you very much for all your dedicated work, and I'm happy that you were surprised, because that's the level of workmanship and integrity that you have, and so thank you for your service.
Thank you, Director Barrera.
Yes, through the chair.
Yes.
Yes, I would also like to congratulate Lori Lee for her hard work in her position and in receiving this award today.
Well, thank you. It's an honor, and I work with some really great people here that just make it worthwhile.
Thank you, Lori. You're so kind. And I think this is, for us as directors, one of the exciting portions of us to be able to get to see the level of the staff that we have at MST. So thank you so much and congratulations. Okay, so with that, we will move on then to our next recognition for today, and that's the 2022 Employee of the Year presentation. And I will turn this over to Mr. Sidorik.
Thank you, Chair. Great honor that we have every year as our executive leadership team selects an employee of the year. And it's a difficult task because we have so many great employees here. Ultimately, it comes down to the CEO. And this year, you saw Albert most recently at your December board meeting where we recognized him as Employee of the Month, and you saw him in a video that was produced on behalf of MST featuring our contactless payment system. And Albert shared the thoughts of a coach operator in the Monterey Peninsula, and in many ways was more eloquent than the CEO on the matter. And Albert, as the former president of the ATU local throughout most of the pandemic, throughout most of this year, worked tirelessly, oftentimes on his own time, communicating with me, sometimes daily, sometimes more than daily, working with staff to make certain that the proper resources were in place, and making certain that our goals and mission were communicated effectively to the rank and file. And with that, we experienced some, I would say, we did not experience some of the labor strife that many of our peers experienced during this time because of Albert's leadership during that time. So it was with great pleasure this year that the executive leadership team and myself selected Albert Garcia, coach operator, as our 2022 Employee of the Year. I'm not sure if Albert is on the call today, but if he is, it'd be wonderful to have him say a few words. He may be working.
Yeah, I don't see him. I'm trying to scroll down to see if I see Albert on the call, but I'm not recognizing his name. I mean, I'm not seeing the name on here.
Yeah. Well,
So
you
he
actually
may-
saw him in December, so
Yeah.
he had some very kind things to say, and we had some very kind things to say to him. And I'm sure none of those feelings have changed during that time.
Yeah, no, thank you, Carl. So he's not here, but we just want to make sure, yeah, you're right. I was glad to be able to be there in person in December and to be able to see him and provide that recognition. But thank you, Albert, for your 12 years of service, your dedication and commitment also to providing excellent customer service to our customers and also to the staff at MST. And thank you for, I think for me also, thank you for ensuring that all employees had the proper PPE during the pandemic and for finding solutions to address employee concerns that were part of those challenging times. And so we're very excited to have Albert as our international movie star. So congratulations, Albert. Okay, so directors, I don't know if I know most of us were able to make some comments during last December's meeting. So if you're all okay, and seeing that Albert's not on the line with us, but this is being recorded so he can listen. I don't know if there's any directors that want to make some brief comments before we move on to our final recognition for today. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next recognition under item 5-3, which is our 22 Management Excellence Award. And I will turn this over to Carl.
Thank you, Chair. Again, great pleasure. Just to give you a little difference, so we try to hold the Employee of the Year and Employee of the Month is provided to frontline, for the most part, staff, drivers, mechanics, staff, and supervisors. And we do, though, want to at least provide an opportunity to recognize some of our management team, and we do that at this time with the Excellence Award. And again, tough decision. You've got a great team working here, so it's a difficult job for the CEO sometimes to pick one. But this year, given the level of effort, those of you who've gone through the comprehensive operations analysis over the past 2 years and the finalization of that process this year, where your board adopted a plan that ultimately became our Better Bus Network. That was through the project leadership of our Director of Planning and Innovation, Michelle Overmeyer, and her efforts for this past year. She also has brought to closure an over 30-month process of getting the Federal Transit Administration to sign a letter for us to approve our NEPA certification for the SURF. And it's just an amazingly long process that, frankly, I'm not certain that I would have the patience to go through, but we did get that finalized, we'll say virtually finalized. I'm still waiting the actual copy of the letter myself, but it is done, and this will allow us to receive apply for funding for the SURF project. Also, her staff and Michelle this past year, through their success in coordinating applications and advocacy letters, led to MST receiving over $30.5 million of federal and state funding for the SURF busway and bus rapid transit project, as well as zero emission bus vehicles. So for those reasons, and for the fact she's just a joy to work with, the CEO has selected Michelle Overmeyer as this year's General Manager Excellence Award winner. And when she was informed, she again was surprised, which speaks to her humility, because she thought somebody else was more deserving than her. But it's you this year, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, and congratulations, Michelle. Well deserved. Thank you so much again for your commitment also to public transit and for your leadership in the comprehensive initiative of the Better Bus Network and implementation. And congratulations again, for everything that you've done on the SURF project and bringing in the 30.5 million. That's pretty astounding as well for our rural transit. So congratulations, and getting to know Michelle over some of the conferences that I've attended. I've always been very impressed with her professionalism and her knowledge of, anything related to MST, and just the willingness to be able to continue to learn, right, Michelle, and continue to look at different strategies to be able to continue to look at efficiencies within our agency. So congratulations, Michelle, well deserved. We're really proud of you. And so I'll open it up to any directors at this time, if they want to make any comments.
Okay, through the chair, I'd like to make a comment, and then that is congratulations, Michelle. You are definitely a very professional, hardworking employee, very knowledgeable, kind, and you are just great to work with. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And I will turn it over to Director Worthy and then Director Martinez.
I echo my colleagues. Michelle, I'm someone that's constantly learning, still not always sure I know what I'm doing, but every time I've ever had a question for you, you've always been very kind and always quick to respond, which I really appreciate. So congratulations. I agree with everyone. You certainly deserve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Worthy. Director Martinez?
Congratulations, Michelle. You're so deserving of this recognition. You go above and beyond what your position or your title describes. And like the Madam Chair mentioned, just in getting to know you a little bit more in conferences, you do really go above and beyond, not just to do your scope of work, but really to inform the board or even just answer our questions, how little or insignificant they might seem, and just being able to be there with us as a team. And the Seattle conference really did mean a lot to me, and it just shows the recognition and the work that you go above and beyond. So once again, congratulations.
Thank you, Director Martinez. I'll turn it over to Director Labar and then Director Barron.
Well, congratulations, Michelle. You know, one of the things I've always loved about the MST family is that they care about the community. And you are someone who has shown time and time again, it's not just a job. You truly care about providing a quality service for our communities that we represent. So thank you so much. Well deserved.
Thank you, Director Labar. I'll turn it over to Director Barron.
Thank you. And thank you, Michelle. As everyone else has stated, it's a well-deserved honor, and I can't think of anyone that would be more appropriate to be in this position today. Thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah. Thank you again and congratulations.
So Chair, if I might use a few minutes here, hopefully not a few minutes. Thank you so much. It's really hard for me to be in the spotlight and receive all this wonderful feedback. Thank you very much. I do want to just acknowledge that I can't do all this on my own. I have a tremendously talented group of professionals on my team. Dave Bilsker, Emma Patel, and Danny Bruno in the planning department were just key in getting this plan into implementation last month. And then, as I mentioned to this board back in November, that there was no department that was able to avoid me over the months leading up to December. It was really a huge effort across departments. So I have to thank the facility staff, our trainers, our IT department, marketing, accounting, and the coach operators. It's really great to have coworkers that work collaboratively with me. And then as far as the $30 million in earmarks, that really was exciting. Matt Deal, our grants analyst, did the heavy lift in pulling a lot of the information, but it was fun to oversee that process. And it has been tough. Our department has not been fully staffed in the planning department. We did get a new staff person that started last week, Natalie Forrest, and we're hiring a planning manager. So I did put in some extra hours over the last few months, and I do want to thank my husband and my son for their patience. And then my parents are on the call. So hi, Mom and Dad. And again, thank you all. It's a great team to work with. Thank you, Carl, for the acknowledgement. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to another year of working hard to accomplish the action plan that you all are going to talk about later. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And those are all the reasons why you're so deserving of this Management of Excellence Award. And hello to your parents. It's so nice to be able to have them with us this morning as well. Okay, so with that, as I said, I think for me, the recognition and the presentations are always really important, and to be able to take some time to acknowledge the team that does a lot of work. I think it's really important within our daily lives and our daily work process. So with that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is public hearings. And at this time, we don't have any public hearings. So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is action items. And today we have 3. We'll begin with item 7-1, ratify the MOU wage reopener, wages between MST and MSTEA, and provide the same benefits to non-represented confidential employees. I'll turn this over to Kelly Halcon and Mr. Mike Laredo.
Yes, good morning, Chair and Board. I'm going to keep this brief because we did meet about this in closed session. You do have a handout on page 15. The contract before you is a 2-year contract with an 8% wage increase in year 1 and a 1% wage increase in year 2 with a $600 bonus to be given. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but we're hoping to ratify this today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Laredo. So I will open it up. Let me open it up to any comments from the public. Okay, see none, then let me bring it back to the directors. Any discussion or comments or clarification from our board of directors? Okay, seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to approve to ratify the MOU wage reopener.
Move to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Director Barrera, and I thought I heard a second. Was that Director Pacheco?
Yes, it was.
Okay, perfect. Can we get roll call, please?
Director Barron,
Yes.
Director Worthy,
Yes.
Director Martinez,
Yes.
Director Labar,
Aye.
Director Vischer,
Yes.
Director Smith,
I'm gonna abstain.
abstain. Director Paduri,
Aye.
Director Barrera,
Yes.
Director Carbone,
Yes.
Director Pacheco,
Yes.
Director Velasquez,
Yes.
and Director Alejo.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion passed.
For clarification on the record, the motion did pass 11-02 with Smith abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll move on then to our next item on our agenda, which is 7-2, receive staff recommendations regarding evolving California hybrid board meeting guidelines and provide direction to staff. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Sidorik, and this item is on page 17 of our report.
Thank you, Chair. As you mentioned on page 17, it begins a discussion on how this body will comply with the new AB 2449 Open Meetings Act as part of the Brown Act. As the memo states, assuming that the governor lifts the COVID emergency that we're currently under at the end of February, as he had previously indicated. At that time, boards like yours will be required to have a quorum of the members of the legislative body participate from a singular physical location, which for all intents and purposes is our boardroom unless we decide to hold a meeting somewhere else. We would have the same similar audio, two-way audio visual system like we have today. We would be providing notice to the public on how to participate virtually like we are today. And if for some reason our broadcast were to terminate due to power outage or some unforeseen circumstance, we would need to suspend the meeting and broadcast until that is rectified. There are within the legislation, there are procedures established that a board member may not miss 3 consecutive months. You cannot ask for a just cause or leave if they haven't been present for 3 consecutive months. It provides for emergency or just cause circumstances. Provides that if someone is participating remotely for a bona fide emergency or just cause circumstance, that they must report whether there is anybody in the room with them at age of 18 or under and why they are within the meeting at that time. We don't believe that there's any issues as from a technology standpoint or a tracking of board members. It is a little more administrative work on staff's part to keep track of this, but it's not going to overwhelm us in any way. What we do have concern is that your board's, which we have for discussion in the workshop, your board's current board COVID policy may conflict with the emergency cause or just cause in that it does not allow a member to be seated if they don't attest that they've been vaccinated or not. So that might be an issue for you to discuss during the closed session on that item. But staff wanted to put this out early to get your input from either now or later so that we can implement a practice guidelines for the meeting starting in March. That concludes my report on this item. Be happy to take any input that you have at this time.
Thank you, Carl. And so given that we are going to have a discussion later in terms of our board policies that conflict with this, how do we want to, we'll have a discussion later. And obviously if there's need to be able to revise some of these protocols, Carl, then we can go ahead and do that, correct? So
Correct.
So let's have a discussion just in terms of the board memo, the changes to that. And just as Carl said, just some highlights of this is not going to begin to be implemented until March, till our meeting of March 13th of this year. And then also just kind of note as well, part of this process asks that we appoint an alternate and that our alternate is not available. So that's in the case that we're not available as the main directors that are appointed to this board, but then also looking at whether your alternates are not available. So I think for us as directors, it's just going to be really imperative to be able to work with our alternates closely if we are going to, if we're going to exercise this part of the regulations, correct, Carl?
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out because the contacting the alternate is not part of the regulation. That's part of the staff's request, though, that we would like the board member to work with their alternate and work with the alternate to be here in person before they ask for the request. So that is I appreciate you pointing that out. That was freelancing on the part of staff, adding that into this guideline that we ask the board members to work directly with their alternates before asking for a just cause leave from the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I think for most of us, we have to do that for some of our other committees that we're assigned to. So unless the directors have any opposition to that, we all open it up for discussion. And I do see that Mayor Labar has his hand up, and then also Director Barron. So I'll start with Director Labar.
Thank you, Chair. And no opposition to that. My question is, so under the Brown Act currently, if someone was going to, let's say we're at a conference and we wanted to participate, we have to do the 2-day notice at that event open to the public. That still stays in place, correct? You basically have 2 mechanisms now.
That is correct.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Director Barron.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions about what we have in front of us. This is the appropriate time to ask questions?
On this specific, yes.
Yes. So thank you. On number 4, on page 19 of the packet, 4A, their appointed alternate is not available to attend in person. I'm not sure that that's it seems like that's a policy decision that's sort of been created out of thin air, which is okay. But I do not agree with that policy decision. I think if I am available to attend, if I, for example, am available to attend under the other requirements of this policy, I'm not sure why the board should prefer my alternate, who probably has significantly less knowledge of the inner workings of MST, in person rather than having me on video conference. That seems really bizarre to me, and not a good policy choice. So I would suggest that maybe 4A would be removed. And then on the previous page, on page 18, in the middle of the page, number 1, the board member has not been absent for the past 3 consecutive months. I did look at AB 2449, the text, and that line is, I believe, a misreading of AB 2449. AB 2449 prohibits me, as an example, from video conferencing if I have been absent for all of the previous 3 months, not any of the previous 3 months. And this policy makes it seem like I get one get out of jail free card every 3 or 4 months. And I believe that is not in agreement with AB 2449, which is I'm allowed 3 get out of the free jail cards every 4 months. So I would ask, I'm not sure what to do.
Staff can go back and reread that, and with our council, come back. That's why we wanted to get this out now before March.
Yeah, and that
we'll come back in February with some updated language.
Yeah, and that wording, and my apologies, that wording also, that same error is carried forward on the next page on 4C. That says they were present during 3 consecutive preceding months. So that's the same interpretation of 2449, and I believe it's the same mistake. So I would ask that be corrected as well.
Very good.
Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Director Barron, for those comments. And so just for clarification, and I know, Carl, you'll go back and have our legal counsel look at the language that's specific to AB 2449. But just in terms of the alternate and not being able to attend, when you're gonna, if we are going, so I can clarify, I can be clear on Director Barron's comments in terms of if I'm going to exercise my just cause or emergency circumstances, that means I'm not going to be present, correct? If me as a director will not, this is where I can, obviously if I can be there, I will, but if I can't, then I can assign, in terms of the policy, not the regulatory language under the provisions of AB 2249, but I am able to assign my alternate because we do, most of our cities have alternates for this board, correct?
Who is the question directed to, Chair?
To you.
Me. Okay, thank you. This, as I think Director Barron pointed out, this was created by staff, this particular line, and it was to encourage, really meant to encourage in-person representation from the jurisdictions. And I think that's a question for you all, though, to answer as your board. Would you require or ask your board members to make certain that their alternate is not available before we allow a board member to participate remotely? I guess that is the gist of this particular edition. And the thought on staff was to encourage as much in-person participation as possible from board members and their alternates. But you could strike that without impacting our compliance with AB 2449. So be happy to take any other feedback or position supporting Mr. Barron or not. And we can incorporate that and bring us back in February for final adoption. Mr. Paduri has his hand up.
Thank you. Yes, so I see Director Labar has his hand up.
Chair, I thought Director Barron made a good point on this matter. So I would be in favor of striking that as well. I think our alternates are used if we can't attend, but if we feel like we want to attend using these mechanisms or the mechanisms of the current Brown Act, that would be appropriate. So I would agree with Director Barron. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Director Labar. Any additional comments from other directors on this matter? And I think this is the only matter of discussion other than some of the other clarifications of the provisions. So if we can get comments so that way we can make sure we bring this back before our March meeting. So for implementation in March, so to bring it back in February. Director Worthy?
Well, I guess my question is, do we need to make a decision right now? Or do we need to wait until we have the discussion during the workshop? I guess is the question.
Oh, so Director
For
Worthy,
staff to go back and look at the language, I guess is the question.
oh, got it. Yes, so staff can go back and look at the language, but if I understood Mr. Sidori correctly, this is part not of the provisions of AB 2449. The other portions of it are, we are clarifying some of the others that were mentioned by Director Barron that will come back to the board for clarification. But on this one, obviously, it's a recommendation from staff. So if there's any other discussions that this, in support, obviously, or not in support of retaining this portion in our policy. So would you be do you want to make your comment, Director Worthy?
No, I'm also in support with Director Barron on this. I think he made all the right points at this point. Thank you.
Okay, directors, I'm gonna ask for.
Board members Paduri and Vischer have their hands raised.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for, I can't see the boardroom, so thank you for helping me out with this one. Okay, go ahead. So we'll start comments from Director Fisher.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. On page 18, I question why the just cause will be limited to only twice a year. There might be reasons for a board member to need this more, especially if it's for illness or in the family. And the other question I have, page 19, number 2, the 72-hour notice might not be always possible if somebody gets sick right before a meeting. Right. And the last question I have is for number 4C, to be present during the 3 consecutive preceding months. Present, does that mean present in person in the room, or does on Zoom also count as being present? And for the rest, I have one additional question. I do not have an alternate. So I would like to know what the procedure is to get one, but I think I can discuss it with Carl here.
Certainly.
So thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Carl.
Yeah, and I will, again, review these questions with council, but my understanding, a lot of this was taken from the legislation itself with regard to the just cause circumstances no more than twice each year. It was either that or another interpretation that we received from, there have been some sessions that our clerk has attended for board clerks that had some discussion of these items, and we use some of those materials to help put this together. But we will revisit that and make certain that that is accurate within that. That was not a staff, unlike 4A on page 19, the 72 hour is not something that staff made up. On the number 2 about the 72 hours, that's simply staff is requesting that. According to the interpretation of legislation, board members have up until the time of the meeting starts to make these requests. So this is really just a courtesy for staff to know how we're setting up the meeting and who we can expect. And, you know, the question is, the critical piece of all of this is we have to have the quorum in place at the legislative body. And so that's for us to know whether we're going to have that or not. So we're requesting that 72 hours notice. Generally, Jeanette puts out a notice Thursday or Friday before the board meeting, so that we can get a feel for who's actually going to be here or not. We do know that life happens, like today. The heavens open up and we don't know. So we'll work with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And if I could just make a comment on that for the directors, I know obviously some of those emergencies, we may not be able to anticipate 72 hours before, and it may, but I think the courtesy has been, especially because we want to continue to conduct business. And for all of us, we know as we sit in other boards, providing notice, if we know in advance that we're not going to be there, and if we know 72 hours in advance, I think that's only a courtesy to make sure and ensure that we have a quorum for our board meeting. So I personally think that's not an issue, but open it up to questions or to comments from the directors.
Yes, through the chair. This is a
So
question.
Vice Chair, can you hold on? I think we had another hand up, and then I'll turn it over to you. So Carl, was there another director?
Oh, yes, Director Perduri. I'm sorry.
Okay. Director Perduri, and then we'll turn it over to Vice Chair Carbone.
Right, thank you. I'll just go by order here. Page number 19, item number 3. The sentence reads, the staff will then process requests on a first come, first served basis. Does this mean, is this implied to mean everybody will get processed, or will some not get processed? So even though they're first come, first served, can everybody participate remotely or not? I mean, to me, I can read it both ways.
Through the chair, it is on a first come, first served basis. The triggering mechanism to have a remote meeting under AB 2449 is you have to have a quorum present. So this is a body of 13. If you have 7 requests come in, only 6 can be processed, and that 7th person either has to send their alternate or the meeting's gonna have to get canceled. That's how this process is set up, because you have to have a quorum in person to attend.
Got it. Okay, all right, that makes sense then. And then under 4A, I'm in agreement that needs to be struck too, because this forces kind of board members to reach out to their alternates to see if they're available or not, and it kind of like implies that it needs to be a mandatory step. And I don't think it needs to be a mandatory step, so I'm in favor of striking that policy. When I read AB 2449, this was a couple of months ago, so it may have changed, but weren't there some definitions for just cause or emergency? As to emergency can be right up to like 6 p.m. You can say, I cannot be present, whereas just cause was defined at 72 hours. Is that accurate?
I don't recall that that distinction being made. I believe it said you can request either of those up to the minute of the meeting.
Okay.
So that's, and I'm getting a nod from General Counsel, so
Okay. All right,
it seems that that's correct. And we can strike the alternate. That's just yeah, we have had committee meetings where we've not had board members present, especially committee meetings. In the past, we have had not enough board members present for a quorum, which impacts the work of the committee itself. And the worst case of it was once we had 1 board member show up out of the 6 members of the committee. So that was probably, I was still feeling that when I had decided to add that line, but we can take that out for sure.
Right. I mean, I agree that
the alternate is great to have. I just think from a policy standpoint, it creates some friction. The last question I had, and this is more with how I had done this in the past, item number 6. It says you have to announce whether any individuals 18 or above are present in the room. Let's say I'm at the airport and I'm taking this as a Zoom call. Well, what happens then? Can I take it or not? Because it's not necessarily a room. It's like in the public space, but there's several folks around.
I'm assuming that this is something that there's someone in the room that is listening to what is going on and seeing what is going on. I would assume that in an airport, you have your headphones in, you're on mute, and you're hovering over your station. Is that a correct interpretation?
That is a interpretation. So one of the things that, I mean, you're hitting a key point of AB 2449. It is a work in progress. So as the state puts out clarification, we'll have clarification. The intent is if you're in your home and you have somebody over 18, you need to be announcing that. The legislation itself doesn't address if you're taking that meeting in a public space. However, if you're taking it in a public space, there is no issue there because you could be under the old Brown Act rules because you could have a publicly noticed meeting. You're not in a private confined area. I don't see that being an issue, but we'll look for further clarification from the state.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Pedori, on those questions. So as we all know, right, we're dealing with this also for our other elected official positions for our city council meetings as well. So as stated, it's still a work in progress. So I mean, there's more, hopefully there's more clear guidance as we move forward before our March 13 implementation date. So I'll move it, Director, sorry, I will turn it over to Director Barron. You had additional comment. Oh, wait, sorry. Let me go back to Vice Chair Carbone. She had some questions, and then I'll ask the directors if those that haven't spoken, if there's any comments, and then we'll bring it back for final comments on this matter. So Vice Chair Carbone.
Yes, so this was directed to legal, Michael, for clarity under the AB 2449 ruling or law. A question was if we look at item 3, so that under just cause circumstance for no more than twice a year for the following purposes of a member being not being able to be in a regular board meeting. Was there a 80-20 rule on that AB 2449? So and how would that work with regular meetings, or would it be regular meetings and committee meetings? How would that kick in?
It would be per meeting, and the specifics of your questions, I have to review AB 2449 again, comparing it with this policy, and we'll work with Carl on that. My understanding is that twice per year falls into that 80-20 percentage. Okay. And it's 2 committee meetings, 2 board meetings, because those are individual sets. So it would be per each type of meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair Carbone, for that. So let me just, Director Barron, I will come back to you, but let me make sure if there's any other board directors that haven't spoken that wish to make any comments on this. And remember, I mean, a lot of this language is coming from the provisions under AB 2249, and obviously there's still a lot of clarification. The only provision, as was recommended by staff, is in regards to the alternate, and that's I want to hear from the other directors that haven't spoken, just if they have any comments in regards to that before we make our final comments.
Chair, this is Smith.
Yes, go ahead, Director Smith.
Yeah, so the comment I would have would be that I think there should be language in here that does address the alternate. I don't know that it should be a requirement, but I think it's out of courtesy and the recognition of the board member's responsibility that they would notify the director that they would be sending an alternate. And I think it's fair to say that it should be in writing. We all have emails, so I think that if a board member recognizes they're unable to make it, then they should be able to say the alternate will be appearing for them. On the language and tenor of the policy, I don't know if our legal counsel was able to review this before it was published.
This policy was not passed through my office directly.
Okay, so I think that a lot of this will get addressed when it does. Because I think the way this is presented, it should make references, as an example, under AB 2449, where it talks about the quorum. I think we should say what that is in this policy so that everybody understands why it's so important. The language that's referenced in AB 2449 also has a significant difference and change from the previous Brown Act policy. So I think that if legal is able to review this and secure more definitions to what is required, because it is a little bit obscure in reading this, but it does say in here, all the following requirements must apply. And so I think that if we're taking it from the statutory requirement, there's not a lot of room for any interpretation. It seems to me that there's only two things in here that could be interpreted, and that's whether or not the 3-month consecutive months is in fact part of the statute, and addressing the alternate appearance. But most of this is going to be statutory. So I think if this is a little more reflective of the terms that is listed in the intent of the Assembly Bill 2449, in terms like quorum, I think it will be easier to understand.
Yeah.
But I think something like this should go through legal first, or we even see it.
Thank you, Director Smith, for those comments. And yeah, I agree. I mean, most of this is going to be statutory language that we can't change, other than what we've talked about in terms of the quorum, for quorum purposes, right, to be able to have an alternate. And I agree, I'll support that it's not a mandate, but it is highly recommended. As Carl stated, we've had instances where we didn't have a quorum. And I think for all of us, we know as part of our duties that is a courtesy. And so we want to make sure, maybe not a full, it's a recommendation. So thank you for that. So I want to take a few more comments so we can wrap this up, and then obviously this will come back. And I think Carl has enough information already from some of the comments that have been provided as to just bringing this back to the Board of Directors. So I'm gonna, Director Barron, if you can just hold on for me for one more minute, let me take it out again to see if there's any other directors that haven't spoken, if there's any comments that they have in regards to this item. Okay, then I don't see any on Zoom, and I don't think there's any in our boardroom. So then I will turn it over to Director Barron for your final comments on this item.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, I guess to Carl and council, that these provisions apply to our subcommittee meetings as well, so that the quorum requirement of 3 out of 6 or 4 out of 6, whatever constitutes a quorum for subcommittee meetings, those people also have to be in person, correct? And that's my only comment.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Director Barron. So seeing that there's no more discussion items, no more items of discussion on this specific item. Carl, I think you have enough information from the directors in regards to bringing back this policy in February before its implementation in March.
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, directors, for that discussion on item C-2, sorry. I think we're in item C-2. So thank you for that. So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item C-3. And conduct our strategic planning workshop. We have 4 items under this one, and this is where we wanted to spend some of our time really hearing from the updates from our MST team, but also hearing feedback from our directors as well. So I will turn this over to Carl, who's going to start us off with the strategic goals progress up to date, and then some of the emerging issues that we are facing currently. And this is on page 21 of your packet.
Thank you, Chair. So starting off with the first item, 7-3A is really just what your board receives for the most part quarterly, as far as an update, as far as where MST is with towards the achieving the strategic goals and priorities of your board. Items 1 through 7, starting on pages 23 and going through pages 26. And then discrete action plan items that your board adopts with each budget period, starting on page 27 through page 32. I do have one comment on the first item. I mentioned that MST has spent all of its COVID revenues. We did receive this year some very specific funding from the state that was COVID funds that didn't come directly to MST, but they went to the state of California for rural transportation. And we do have some money outstanding there. And to address a question that was brought up under public comment by Ms. Eddy, we are working with the Santa Clara VTA, the Valley Transportation Authority, to see if there is some partnership that can be forged between Santa Clara VTA and MST that would allow us to use some of these rural funds to leverage a restatement of service, at least as far as the Gilroy train station, where transit riders could then make connection with the new bus rapid transit that's being currently offered by the VTA and the Caltrain services that serve the Gilroy train station. So I just wanted to make that update that there is a small amount of COVID federal relief money in there for rural services, and there may be an opportunity to use that to get services to the Gilroy Caltrain station. Other than that, you've had this was presented to you a week ago in advance. If there are any questions, I don't intend to go through item by item, all 7 pages of this. If there are questions, I'd be happy to take them. And if there's something we want to discuss, be happy to discuss it at this time.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl, for that. So let me open it up for discussion. Let me take it out to the public first, and then we'll bring it back to the directors for any comments or questions on this item. So I will take it out to the public. Are there any comments on item 7-3 under item A under strategic goals progress? The different information that was presented. So let me see if there's any members of the public at this time that like to make any comments. Okay, seeing none on Zoom. Are there any members of the public that are in our boardroom?
There is
none.
One seeking comment. We do have some members of the public, but I don't see that they're asking to provide comment. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So then I'll bring it back to the directors. So I'll open it up if there's any questions from the directors on the information that was provided to us. And I do see that director, let me start with Zoom. And so Director Labar, go ahead, Director Labar.
Thank you, Chair. One comment is obviously shows the tremendous amount of work that MST does on behalf of our community. On the portion that's the FY 2021-22 and 2022-23 project action plan update. One question is, has the state contacted MST regarding coordination of our bus schedules with rail schedules?
We are not aware of any communications from the state regarding that topic.
Okay, and I ask that because the state is, under their state rail plan, they have people who say that that is part of their program. So they may contact us in the future, I don't know. On that same update, number 11 regarding autonomous vehicles, thank you for its inclusion in your work there and providing input in the state. I just want to make a comment. I still firmly believe that public transit is the ideal agency to manage autonomous vehicle fleets for transportation. To me, that's an equalizer. And I just hope that as you advocate for state policies to include that, that would just be my comment. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Labar. Any other members, any other directors that are joining us via Zoom? Okay, seeing none, any of the directors that are joining us in the boardroom have any comments?
This is Paduri. I just have a quick comment.
Okay, go ahead, Director Paduri.
Thank you. The question was, you had mentioned like COVID-related funds are still available for use. Typically, what I've seen is COVID-related funds have a expiry date. Do you know what the date is for these?
For these rural funds, I'm going to ask if Michelle is still on the line. That's under her.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Do we have a date on that?
So we should be able to use, well, there's two different grants, and I'm not going to get into the details of each, but one should get us through March of this year, and the other one, it looks like we have a couple years to spend it. So we've already encumbered the funds and we've identified what it's being used for.
And they, so the one which is on March, which is really coming up in 2 months, we are in a position then to expend those funds by March then?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you both for that. Okay, any other comments from the directors in our boardroom? Okay, so I have just a quick comments if there's no other comments.
Chair, this is Smith.
Oh, Director Smith?
Yeah, thank you very much. I just had a observation and this is a question as we move forward. So we are looking at our 7 goals that are outlined for the strategic goals in this update today. And then in our packet, we also have a document that's the projected action plan update, which is from June. So at what point in the phase do we reestablish the project action outline for 2023 and go forward? So is that something that comes to us in a future date where we are collecting all of the, I guess they could be described as work plan, board work plan kind of initiatives? So when does that come to us?
We provide this all back to you with the draft budget, which comes around about April timeframe.
Okay.
And then we update that for, it's a 2-year budget.
Okay.
And a 2-year work plan.
Okay.
That looks like this.
Okay.
And that gets updated and then adopted by your board in June.
Okay.
For the coming fiscal year.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Chair. That's all I had.
There may be a little push between April and May, but everything's adopted in June.
Yeah, in cycle with what we're doing for the
Right.
the
So
2-year fiscal.
yeah, so this strategic, the way staff looks at this workshop gives us some thoughts as far as where your board is thinking about what new items might emerge for work plan items that may come up today. Then as staff will meet prior to this meeting, or I'm sorry, subsequent to this meeting, we will meet and discuss what went on today, and we'll start developing a work plan while we're coming up with a budget. What can we afford to do? What projects do we have the staffing to do, and what makes sense with input that we're getting from the board? on this and from the public. So we'll come back to you with a draft of that
Okay.
that then gets finalized.
Okay. And so Chair and Carl, I guess this is another question. Do you want to hear those kinds of things from us today?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that was the chair's question.
Yes.
Calling. So I would just say priorities for me are things that increase ridership, marketing plan. Also, how we are able to leverage the revenue side for increasing ridership, which actually means that we are less dependent on external funding. I recognize that the revenue side is a smaller picture, but I'd like to concentrate on where that is and how we might increase that revenue side from ridership. But I'd be interested in knowing what our opportunities would be in the marketing and concentrating on increasing ridership.
Okay.
And those are probably already things that you have as a concentrated effort, but those are kind of my priorities.
Okay. And when you say, could I say that you have a goal of reducing the amount of subsidy per passenger? Is that?
Yeah, that
Okay.
would be the way to say it accurately, is that
Okay.
the subsidies are an essential
Right.
to buses and trains. I get that. But I'm also aware that those can be changing with the winds of politics in Washington and Sacramento.
Right.
So refining those numbers would be a goal that I would have.
Okay. And very good. We will include that in our plans and our discussions, and you won't be surprised. It's something that we think about, everything from our bus
Yeah.
advertising that's on the side of our buses, or are there opportunities to get endorsements or for our facilities? Maybe there's a way to gain some financial input for the surf busway to the Montage healthcare transit center, or something like that. So there are those types of opportunities that staff can allocate resources to looking at.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chair. That was all I had.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for those comments, Director Smith. So thank you for just kind of starting us off with some of those comments that other directors may want to provide for staff. So as was said, we're in the 2-year plan, and I think this is where we wanted just to spend some time to be able to have a little bit more discussion. So I'll open it up. I have some comments as well, but I'll hold off on mine until I hear from other directors. So let's continue. If there's no other directors from the boardroom, then I'll take it out to directors that are joining us via Zoom. So let me do one more call out for the directors that are in our boardroom. If there's any additional comments, I know we heard from Director Pedori and Director Smith. Anyone else?
Yes. Yeah, this is Lisbeth Visser. I would like to agree with Director Smith, trying to increase ridership, but also I would like to see, has any outreach been done to people like me and my neighbors who never even use the bus? I know I need to download the app and find out. So, but I'm wondering, that's a large group of residents that have not even tried using public transportation in our own county.
Okay. Outreach to what we call choice riders, folks who may have the ability to use their own vehicle, but might want to choose to use transit instead.
Yes, yes. Be nice to the planet.
We will. Very good. We will make a note of that.
Yeah, thank you, Director Fisher, for that. So was there anyone else in the boardroom? Carl, if you can help me with this portion of it, because I can't see who else.
Raising their hands or their eyebrows at this point.
Okay. So then we'll move into those directors that are joining us via Zoom. And I do see that Director Worthy has her hand raised. So I will turn it over to Director Worthy.
Okay, my comment is related to the infrastructure that we need to put in place for the South County facilities. That was an area that I'm still needing some more information on. I know I've spoken to our staff and they're telling me that there has been some communication, but I'm wondering if we know anything about that at this point.
Okay, so this would be specifically the South County bus stops for the circulator services.
Yes, sir.
Michelle is on the line and, I'm sorry, Lisa Reinheimer, who has our project manager, Vince Dang, handling that. Thank you. Sorry, you're off the hook, Michelle. Go to Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms.
Not
Chair,
chair.
sorry, I threw my pen over here, threw me off. Thank you. We are indeed in the process of working with the city of Gonzales to piggyback off of an on-call engineering design firm list that Mr. Patrick Dobbins is working on. And so once that gets approved by the city of Gonzales, we are able to put out a scope of work for the identified on-call list and get them started on that scope of work for the 3 South County cities that we're working with, Soledad and Greenfield as well. So our goal is to get this done in 2023, but it will really depend on how the design plays out, as well as the permitting process within each of the cities.
Okay, I guess if I may, I feel like things keep getting pushed a bit. Not trying to be curt about it, but I feel like this has been kind of going on for a while. Is that a breakdown on our end? Is it a breakdown on the MST's end? I just want to be clear on where this is happening, because we've been discussing it for quite some time. So
I'll try to take a stab at this so that I don't get my staff into a. We did have one city, King City, under the same guidelines, same program, managed to
get it done.
Get it done under this. So it really, I believe it's up to how each individual city has prioritized this project and has the ability to staff it. I understand that every city has different resources available, but MST has been, encouraging and pushing. And I wouldn't say that there's anything from MST's perspective that we haven't tried to do to make this happen, because we wanted all the cities to be up and running on December 10th with this. That was our plan over a year ago. And we did manage to get one city to make it happen. So we'll leave it there.
So,
okay.
Yeah,
No,
Director.
that's fine. Go ahead, Chair. Do you want to interject on this?
Yes, thank you. So what I'll ask on this one, Carl, especially, I don't want to take up too much more of the time here, but because it is, I know we're talking about increased ridership. We've been talking about, this whole operation process revamp for the past 2 years. I think it is imperative, as we're looking at our goals and what those goals have. And part of that was the better bus network. So if we can schedule a meeting with both the 3 South County cities that have not implemented this and their respective city managers, so we can discuss how we can move forward with this and what are some of those impediments that are preventing us from moving forward and how we can find a resolution.
Yeah. I mean, and I think what Lisa has said is there seems to be action now, where there was none earlier or little action being taken. We do have, we do have a plan in place. And we are working with the 3 cities left cooperatively on using a single source for on-call design services. So it is starting to happen now that we're through the holidays.
Yeah, and I think having a timeline and just just for us as Lisa's directors to make sure that we have those discussions if needed, and we can, early on in the process, just make sure that we understand timelines as well.
Yes, and if I may interject as well, I know you are all aware that some of our cities have had some personnel issues too. So I think that really has entered into this. And so we have all been in discussion. I know I really started getting more on it in November with them. So hopefully we can get this resolved, and I appreciate all of your help on this. I hope I didn't sound like I was being, blaming anyone. That was not my intention. So I appreciate MST always, and hopefully we can get this resolved very soon. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Director Worthy. Okay, so we'll move on. If there's any other comments from any of the directors. Okay, well, seeing none, then I'll make my final comments on this item, Carl, and then we can move on to item 7-2. So thank you for providing all of those updates. I do have some questions, though, in regards to actually more of the updates for the ridership as we try to increase ridership. And we look at some of the issues that we have on the action plan. Let me start with let me go to the action plan because I think that's probably easiest for me. Thank you for providing us an update on the Better Bus Network for the South County cities. We did have, there was another item as well in terms of looking at our staffing, and I'm not able to find it here, but we did entertain a while ago conversations with Hartnell College and working with some of their departments to be able to have some type of workforce development agreement to be able to generate some of those just in terms of employee, it's gaining more of our employee pipeline. So I know that was something that we had discussed in the past. So wanted just to make sure we're still, if there's an update on how we're doing that. I know obviously we have a contract on the free rides for well, it's not free rides, but that we're working with the students. But just wanted to see if there was an update on that. Is that still something that we continue to pursue?
Yeah, Kelly Halkin, our Director of HR and Risk, with regard to our Hartnell apprenticeship program and outreach program. She can speak to that for sure.
Kelly Halkin, Director of Human Resources and Risk for Monterey Salinas Transit. Good morning, board members. Yes, I do. I can provide an update on that. Norm and myself have been working on that. Norm Tutafuki, who is our Chief Operating Officer. Right now, we've been working with staff at Hartnell and have been for probably about 18 months. Currently, one of the steps that we are working on is a certification process that has to be approved through the union, not our local, but like an international or labor board up in Sacramento, is my understanding. And that seems to be taking a while because that's how you tap into funding for these programs. And Hartnell wants to use funding to start a program. Norman and myself, through some, I would say, when we were in Ontario for CTA as well as APTA, there are some workforce boards that ATU is a part of in the state of California. And so we have been working with that group to go into alternative routing. There's consortiums and there's called the California Transit Workers. And so I've been in talks with an individual named Rick who runs that program. And we're trying to set up a meeting right now to myself and Norm to speak with them about moving through that process. And that could bypass the whole certification of having to have the international ATU involved and Sacramento. So that's kind of what we're looking at. This is some alternative routing to get around our quagmire that we're having with Hartnell.
Thank you, Kelly, for that update. Hopefully that works out and we don't have to go through all those other steps, and hopefully that expedites the process as well. Thank you. Thank you for that update. And then my final on some of those goals and our action plan, Carl, is I know that we are working on the non-emergency medical transportation and seeking reimbursement through Medi-Cal. So just in terms of generation of additional revenues, is this significant enough for us to continue, to pursue, and what else can be done on this end?
I would say that the revenue is significant and it's basically, for us, I would call it free money. We're making the trips anyway. We're providing the trips and it provides us a way of getting reimbursement from Medi-Cal for trips that we were already making for their clients. Norm, do you have any, as far as information about the status of that program? Or
Yeah,
what is
we're
the type of
making
revenue
strides
could
on the
generate through
program.
this?
I don't have the exact numbers that we'll be generating. We'll be billing, I think quarterly now. At first we had hoped to bill weekly or monthly or quicker. But what we found out is if we bill quarterly, we can save some money that way and then get reimbursement for the chunk. Right now, we're kind of balancing the loads within our paratransit vehicle. We don't want to put too many MT trips with our paratransit trips that would cause us any delays to our schedule. So that's what we're balancing right now. But we are continuing to operate service and look forward to hopefully getting more employees at MV or contracted so that we can increase the number of MT trips that we deliver.
Norm, thank you for that. On my end, I just kind of heard that a little bit jumbled, but I can get with you to gather more information on that. But
okay, sorry about that.
Norm, let's put on a future agenda for the board. Maybe we can provide at least the operations committee. At the committee level, we can do a non-emergency medical transportation update to the committee, and then the full board can get that report as part of their board packet. Does that sound good for you, Chair?
yes, thank you for that.
That'll force us to put the numbers together, provide a report, and then the full board will get the report in their packet.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And then just on my final comments on that, I just want to say, I know in terms of marketing and disseminating information, especially on the different programs as things change. I know that we had the Spanish, we did provide the Spanish annual report this year. So I want to thank you for doing that. And I know that we obviously do have some compliance with our civil rights and making sure within our demographics and within Monterey County's platform, whether additional languages are needed for that report, but want to say thank you on that. And then just as, Director Smith did ask in terms of the marketing, I know we have a good marketing team, but as we're changing and as things are changing, is being able to utilize and have the sufficient tools necessary to be able to do the marketing that's needed on different platforms for our different demographics throughout Monterey County. And then just my final is in regards to the goal number 6 that we have for practices that encourage environmental sustainability and resource and conversation throughout the different conferences that we've attended last year. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion in terms of emerging technologies, and we obviously have a mandate for zero electric emission buses. But there is obviously some challenges in regards to the infrastructure as well. And just for me, I know this is going to be really important for us to really be on the forefront of what's coming forward. What are those mandates? How we're going to continue to be prepared and get ready to be able to implement those mandates that are coming from the state. I know we have, currently the 16 hybrid electric vehicles and some of our fleet as well as the electric trolley. But just kind of keeping an eye on that, as I know that there was conversations about electric buses versus hydrogen. And so just being able to ensure that we have the infrastructure necessary as we move forward with implementation.
Okay. Very good. And just FYI, I'll be attending a hydrogen fueling seminar in Southern California next week. So we'll be continuing to pursue the gaining more information about the status of the hydrogen market. And staff is also looking to going very bold with a funding request from the state. They're looking for bold projects. That's a word that they used. So we'll be seeking almost 24 battery electric buses because they're looking to fund big projects. So we're gonna put in for a big project for battery electric buses while we're still investigating the future of hydrogen.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for that. And then just, I know, keep us informed in terms of the transit, the Salinas transit relocation study. I know that you've been working with Salinas on that, and there's obviously some efforts, but I know I don't know the timeline for when they're wanting to have this happen, but obviously that'd be an impact for us as well. And then I just want to say thank you as well for offering the free rides to the unsheltered during these winter storms. So I know as transit, you're always pivoting, right, from what we do to what we need to do to better serve our community. So I just want to pause for a bit to say thank you to your team for doing that.
Yeah, that provides, I was wondering when I could get a word in on this, and you just provided me the entree for that. Been communicating, we have a staff person, Marzette Henderson, our manager of our transportation departments. We have a number of his staff, as well as within our transportation mobility departments and our contracted services, are working together with the county's EOC. We have a seat at the table. We're in constant contact with them. We currently have vehicles staged as we speak out in Pajaro because they're awaiting, as board member Alejo indicated, there was going to be a topping of the Pajaro River likely later today. Also, there's evacuation notices at the mouth of the Carmel River. And we have vehicles staged and ready to go. And we've been working with our contractor MV, as well as our local taxi cab companies, to have a plan in place to do large scale or individual evacuations. And so I would have to say, in the 20+ years I've been here, we've been through a number of floods and fires and other emergencies. And I would say this time around, the county EOC and Office of Emergency Services, this has been the most proactive that I have seen them as far as bringing MST in early and communicating with us regularly. I'm going to say they're doing a great job. We've done 14 evacuations as of this morning, one large scale, 12 people, unhoused people in King City, that these were families with children that were unhoused that we took to shelters. We also had 2 individual trips as well. There's just single person evacuations as well. And we stand ready to do more as the as OES directs us. So that was what I was trying to work in earlier.
Yeah, thank you for that update, Carl. Thank you for also the county and what they've been doing with their EOC. I know all of us have been getting, informed on quite a regular basis in regards to some of those evacuation notices, and their PIO has been doing a great job sending out those emails also to us as elected. So thank you so much for that.
Welcome.
Okay, so we will, directors, I want to make sure that we continue then, if there's no further discussion on item 7-1, or sorry, 7-3 on the A portion, that we move on to our next items on the agenda. So unless I see any hands up, we will move forward with item 7-3B, which is our board meeting COVID-19 vaccination policy updates. And this is on page 31, and I will turn it over to Carl for that. And thank you, directors, for all of your comments under portion A. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. So 7-3B, this is tangentially related to item 7.2 that you discussed. Your board adopted in January of 2022 some hybrid meeting policies for our board as we sought to come back through multiple variants and multiple surges. And I have those bullet pointed for you on page 31. As we come back and as in anticipation of the COVID emergency being lifted by the state in February, as previously discussed, staff wants your board to discuss or determine whether you want to continue this guidance for how we operate in public, in whole, in part, but looking forward to a quick discussion on this item because there's been absolutely no controversy at all as we've discussed this in the past.
Yep.
Can't see my face because it's behind a mask.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl. And I know obviously this has been an item, as Carl said, that has been pretty contentious, and we've had a lot of lengthy discussions on this matter. It's coming back to us for hopefully it's a brief discussion because we obviously have a lot of other mandates before us as well. But this was a board vaccination policy, and this board elected to implement additional policies in place that, as Carl said, they're before you and listed in bullet points. So let me open up the discussion for the directors to see if there's a need for us to continue with this policy. There was recommendations that were made by the staff in regards to this item. So it's either alter requirements for the board members to receive COVID-19 vaccinations before attending meetings, and MST safety staff recommends incorporating language requiring wearing a face covering in public indoor community settings, regardless of vaccination status when community transmission is high. And this is as per information provided by the county on this item. So with that, I will open it up to the members let me open it up to our directors that are joining us in the boardroom if there's any discussion or comments on this matter. And then I will take it out to our directors joining us via Zoom.
Who wants to go? Anybody?
Yeah, Chair, this is Smith. I'll weigh in. I was a little surprised when I went through the packet to learn that there was such a policy for requirement of vaccination. I can't argue for the past, but I'll argue for the future. I think we are in a position where we should revise this and drop the policy of a requirement of vaccination. I can support the mask requirement, but I think we are getting to the point where we need to be prepared to accommodate the pending AB 2449 requirements. And I think this policy puts it in a potential conflict where we are going to be depriving members of being able to have access to attend the meetings. So I don't see the legitimacy of continuing the policy of a requirement of vaccination.
Thank you, Director Smith, for your comments. Any other directors from the boardroom? And then I will turn it over to our directors on Zoom. Okay, Carl, I don't see any. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. So let me turn it over to our directors joining us via Zoom. And if you can raise your hand, Director Worthy.
Well, I believe that we have had this discussion for a very long time. And as we all know, many of these items have been lifted all over at this point. I have been one of those who was against this mandate in the beginning. However, I respect my colleagues, and I also feel at this point we are in a position where we can revise this particular mandate. I don't believe it is imperative. I think I can only speak for my city council, but we have had for months now, we have not worn a mask at our meetings. We've been in person for many months. And I absolutely feel that we should do a revision at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Worthy. Director Labar.
Thank you, Chair. I would just ask that the policy expire at the end of February, conditioned on the governor's declaration of a state of emergency is removed. That'd be my only comment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And you said the expire end of January before the governor's.
End of February.
End of February, got it.
But
Thank you.
but conditioned on the governor actually removing his state of emergency, since he is stating that it would be February 23rd.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Director Barron?
Thank you. I am generally in agreement with relaxing the vaccination requirements, and obviously the social distancing requirements. I would simply ask that masks continue to be required in the boardroom. I don't find that that's an undue hindrance for the safety of other board members and staff. And in the absence of that, my council has adopted a policy where we rely on the transmission rates as set forth by the Monterey County Department of Health. And we require masks when the transmission rates are medium and high, but not when the transmission rates are low. So I would be willing to go along with, I would prefer to go along with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Barron. Any other comments from the directors on this matter? Okay, seeing none, then I will bring it. Oh, Director Labar, you have another comment?
I think what Director Barron said was a fair. I would just say on the mask portion to go with staff recommendation on high. That would be my only comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Labar. And so I'll make my final comment, seeing I don't see anybody else. And I think I would concur with the recommendations to be able to drop the vaccination policy that we had based on, obviously, you know, we based on some of the discussions that we had today, and also some of those policies that we don't entertain at our other meetings that we have in our council meetings. I don't know if any of our other directors here are implementing those policies. I know we are not. But I do agree that we retain the wearing of the face covering when the Monterey County Department of Health director does implement that to be at a high transmission rate. So that would be my recommendation in terms of the modifications to this board policy. And also, I think I would agree that unless if at the time the governor does lift his and removes the state of emergency, that these could be lifted at the same time as well. So that would be my recommendation. We've heard discussion on this. Carl, does this need a vote?
No, this is for staff. We'll come back with something in February that finalizes, and you can take an official action then. We'll, you know, I'm hearing a little difference of opinion on the medium and the high. We'll put something out, and you all can modify it then and see where the votes fall at that time.
Okay, that sounds good. I know typically we've seen it at the high.
Right.
But, okay. Directors, we're okay in agreement with that if there's no further discussion. Do I need to take it out to the public?
No, this is just a workshop item.
Okay, perfect. So then if there's no further discussion on this, directors, and we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. And at this time, it is item C, which is recruitment challenges and potential solutions. And I'll turn this over to Carl and to Kelly. And this is on page 33 of your report.
Thank you. Yeah, as indicated, like everyone else, MST is not exclusive in this. We are struggling with recruiting employees, just like local businesses, hotels, restaurants, colleges, universities. Everyone is having difficulty. We are, as a result of that, some of those difficulties, we've not been able to implement the full better bus network as originally adopted by your board due to staffing shortages. In many discussions with the peers and those of you who've been able to attend our national conference in Seattle and then our state conference in Ontario earlier this year, you'll learn that you know, a lot of it's not necessarily about the wages. Some of it is about the type of work. Some of it has to do with the length of time that the state takes in order to process our request to get our drivers licensed. Their federal drug policies that conflict with state, more lenient policies, particularly around the legal use of cannabis. We have to comply with a federal rule that if presence of cannabis is detected, we cannot make a job offer and we have to do an immediate termination. No questions asked, no appeals. That has been a hindrance. What we found is transit operators who, when adjusted for the cost of living in their areas, may have some of the highest paid transit operators in the country, still cannot hire public transit operators. It's a job that it's a workforce that is in virtually all cases union driven, seniority driven, and the newest worker gets the lousiest runs. They don't get weekends off, they don't get holidays off, they have to pay their dues. And there's been a change in the attitudes of workers that they may not be willing to do that type of work anymore. And we're trying to figure out ways from a staffing perspective, everything from offering incentives, currently offering $3,500, $3,500, Kelly? Yes, $3,500 incentive, close enough to kind of lay breadcrumbs along the way for people to show up for their first day of work, to finish their training, to finish their first year, to finish their second year of work. We offer $500 or $1,000, little increments along the way so that there's cash for them to pick up. And then hopefully by the time they're here a couple of years, they will have figured out that they found a way to make this type of work lifestyle work for them. Other transit operators are doing this as well. Santa Cruz Metro has a similar policy. Our own MV Transit is offering similar types of incentives for their workforce. They don't offer quite as much as MST offers, and I have made an offer to MST. It's important enough for them to attract more passengers that maybe MST can offer a little incentive to MV to their coach operators directly, not to MV corporate, but offer some cash to the MV drivers for fulfilling the requirements, staying within the program, similar to what we're doing with our own drivers. So I gave you a report about this transit workforce shortage that was commissioned by our National Transportation Advocacy Group, APTA. There is an executive summary in your packet, but I also did provide a link to the entire packet. We have Kelly Halpin here who can speak more directly about some things that we're thinking about internally about how we can change the work and make the work maybe more something more attractive to our workers. And there may be things within our contract we can do, or maybe things that we need to modify. So be happy to introduce Kelly or take any questions you all may have at this time.
Thank you, Carl. So before you introduce Kelly, I just want to, or you know what, let's have Kelly provide the directors with what we're, additional information, what we're doing, and then we'll open it up to questions from the directors.
I think Carl pretty much summarized it correctly. We are not really having a recruitment issue on the admin side. It's really drivers. And in the last probably 7 months, I would say now mechanics, which we've had that problem in the past about 4 years ago. And now we're seeing it again. And so really our focus has been on strategies for attracting drivers and now mechanics. But Carl summarized it correctly of some of the things that we've looked at for attracting drivers.
Thank you, Kelly. So I'll open it up to questions, and let me start with Zoom, and then I'll bring it back to any questions on from directors that are joining us in the boardroom. Director Labar, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. And I would imagine some of these have to do, some of my questions have to do with some of our agreements. So Uber has built their model on the ability for people to be drivers on their time. Do we have the ability to offer like a driver one shift a week if they'll pick one shift a week?
We do. We actually, and that's one of the things that we're looking at. We have, I'm not necessarily to that level, but we do have a limited duty operator. It's do we not have limited duty anymore?
No, we do. We do have a limited
Right.
duty, but but yes, we do have a CBA in place that there are some prohibitors that we would need to look at and discuss.
Right. But what we've been discussing internally before Kelly's try not to get her too I'm not too far off the range here. I'll bring it back, I promise, Kelly. We're looking at ways, and we've looked at this in the past. I've been 10 years or more where we've tried to really recruit these, what we call limited duty. Think of a part-time driver with some benefits, but not a full load of benefits. And we would look at like school bus drivers as a potential market for that. And we were 10 years ago wildly unsuccessful at attracting part-time or what we call limited duty drivers. The market has changed, and you do see people who are interested in doing part-time work, and they're doing that either for Uber or they're for delivery folks. And we're trying to think of ways, are there ways that we can create better work for our full-time employees, less weekends, less holidays, more straight 8 hours, not long breaks in the middle of the day that they may be unpaid for? Are there ways that we can do that? And then how many part-time workers would we need to cover, limited duty workers to cover that work? And what would that cost MST? Could we still provide the level of service that we're providing in that? So we're in the process of crunching the numbers now. I've asked our scheduler, Dave Bielsker, that once we get through this better bus network issues, fine tuning based on that implementation, then the next step will be, how do we create a more attractive work schedule for our employees? That's where I was going, Kelly.
Okay.
We're not saying that we're going to have Uber drivers or something like that, but
I just want to make sure we don't violate anything.
no.
No, and I was just using it as example, but it is a trend that we are seeing where will work at different companies, but they like the ability to just kind of do this one thing on that day, or only once a week or twice a week. And it may offer an opportunity for some of our retired drivers who may want to come in for just a day a week to supplement income, as long as it wouldn't disadvantage their retirement.
Correct.
Well, and
The criminal history has been basically, the issue is coming to the cannabis. Is that correct? Is that our biggest issue right now?
It's not a big issue. It is an issue in the industry. I don't know
Okay.
if we're actually losing applicants through the drug testing process. Kelly, can you speak to that, or
we're not.
we're not? Okay.
Okay, that's good to hear.
It is brought up in your reports at a national level. I know Denver RTD is one, and then Seattle is one that is comes up regularly, that they would like to loosen the federal requirement because they claim that they're having difficulty hiring people. That hasn't been our issue. Has been more getting people who are willing to accept the work, because the work for the new employee is not attractive. It's like I said, it's the stuff that everybody else doesn't want who has higher seniority.
Okay, and I did see the seniority portion, and there may be opportunities to address that in the report. On the criminal background checks, so we're not really having an issue with that portion again?
Correct.
Okay, and then on the driver's history, is that more related to what Carl had spoke about, the time to get that license? Or are we having any issues with past driving histories with any of our candidates?
We do not have issues of past driving history. And I kind of want to preface that we don't have people that we have taken back their job offer because of the things that you've mentioned so far. But potentially you could have people who read the job description and maybe don't apply because they don't want to adhere to those things. We don't know those numbers because we haven't gotten that feedback. So that's something that's being discussed in the industry is whether these things that are in place potentially prohibit people from taking these jobs on top of the scheduling. Scheduling is number one. That's been the number one thing.
Okay, and that's where we have a little more flexibility. And thank God we have great relationships with our labor units. So have my last question, Chair, and then I'll be finished. So what you just mentioned, Kelly, regarding the information a potential candidate must see, are we looking at reframing as more of, are you interested in becoming a driver or mechanic? Please talk to us and we'll go through the process, like a pre-talk first before they see what those requirements are.
We could do that, although there has been a new law established in January 1st of 2023 that requires that you have your job announcements up, and they do have all the pay range on there as well. Was signed by Governor Newsom back in October. So, I mean, we would still be required to put all that stuff up. But there has been talks. We were focused more on the BBN because of resources that we have internally, but Akuyo and myself and Lisa Reinheimer have been talking about potential campaigns to get something a little bit more flashy out there to attract drivers than what we have. And so that might be a tagline that we could use for that.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, one more last comment. So working with MV, and Carl mentioned maybe looking at providing them some extra dollars to incentivize their recruitment efforts. But also, will you look at taking some of those drivers and moving into our system? And secondly, I'll just, on the electric buses that you mentioned earlier, Carl, if we are successful in that grant, I would encourage MST speaking with the manufacturers on offering mechanical training on those units themselves to help provide for us to be able to recruit mechanics, because that would be a whole new system. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all those questions, Director Labar. And just because of the timing, I just want to make sure if we can move quickly on this. And Carl, what I like to do also on this note, after we have the comments from the directors, is being able to look at, I know you mentioned existing strategies that MST is looking at or is implementing. If that can come back to the board as well, just to get an update in terms of what are some of those strategic efforts based on the report, the summary executive report that was provided. I know some of them we're already doing, but just giving us a little bit more of those updates and information. And then the directors that, want to provide additional information to staff, we could do that as well. So let me just finish. Any of the other directors that are joining us via Zoom have any comments?
Yeah, Chair.
So let me,
Okay.
Yeah, let me go to the boardroom right now. I'm just on Zoom. Just one more call out for any of the directors joining us via Zoom. Okay, seeing none, then I'll bring it back to the boardroom. So was that Director Smith?
Yes, it was. On the topic of backgrounds and recruitment, that's one of the things that I do in my side work from when I retired. But I just wanted to to give some feedback, and I'm sure HR knows this, but when an employee is looking at a potential application, one of the things, and I don't think it's contained in this executive summary, is they're looking for something to not take too long. And so I would encourage that we look at our timeline and our systems internally, because if an employee is applying and they're believing it's going to take them 2 months to get through the process, that will cause you to lose quite a few of your applicants right from the start. But on the downside of that, you have statutory requirements that you got to follow. So they have to be pushed almost to the rapid speed of your working out of the norm in terms of the timeline. So any opportunities to refine that, to jump ahead with things out of the order that are not typical. And I know some of the departments that I've worked with have redone their timelines completely within the confines of the statutory requirements. And it's things like getting started on onboarding before they're even an employee. So they get videos, they get access to knowing more about the job, because you want the emotional connection to that employee applicant before they get too far along, because you don't want them to take another employment opportunity because yours took 2 months. So I don't know what the timeline is, but I know that that is one of the main barriers to getting employees to go through the entire process. Is there's a lot of jobs out there. And so you're competing with a very low income or a low unemployment rate, but still at the same time, a lot of industries need a lot of employees. So you're in competition with everyone. So if it takes too long, people will walk away. And I would just encourage us to look at the timeline and see if there's opportunities to make it a faster process. And maybe if we could get maybe a study session in the future where we could kind of examine the process, because I'm sure that there's some ways that we can cut out a week here or a week there, because that makes a big difference.
We have, and that is something that we do look at, and something that I've been pushing our staff to do, but it is the, and we with the Better Bus Network, and actually during COVID, we rescinded, and we're not running a lot of lines. And so we didn't require our new employees to train on those lines that we were no longer running during COVID. So that took a week off here or there. And so that is something I know Kelly's team is constantly looking at, ways of we want to do it fast, but we also we have a high standard of safety, and we have to conform with, we actually do more training than we're legally required to do, because we've learned over time that we want to instill the safety from the very beginning for long-term employee success. So there are some things that we don't want to compromise on, but we certainly need to work, especially at the state and federal level. There are just on the criminal background checks and some of the driver and the licensing. I had an example I throw at the DMV periodically where we needed to get some drivers and mechanics licensed, and they thought it was reasonable to schedule our group to go out to Bakersfield to be tested, because that's where they had an opening for us to be tested that week. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait, another week in order to get these folks licensed. And I had to call and actually had conversations at the state level with the director of the DMV saying, this is what your staff is telling us, that it's reasonable to expect us to take a group of people to Bakersfield to be tested.
So,
yeah.
So Carl, with that, just if I can interject, thank you, Director Smith, for some of those comments. And so Carl, in terms of just because we already know, and as you said, this is a nationwide kind of phenomenon, right? It's not just us at the MST, but transit across the nation is really experiencing some of these driver shortages, and we've heard it over and over at the last conferences that we've attended, is maybe putting together some type of possible legislative fixes that we can discuss with our legislators to be able to have them really understand what some of these challenges are at the staffing level with our drivers, and what are some of the potential fixes that we may work with them on some of those statutory requirements under state and federal law.
Right. And I think what staff can do for the board is maybe we break this down into 3 areas. We do have there's the regulatory issues that hang us up that maybe we need to focus on advocacy for. There are items within our own contract that as staff, we know we could, perhaps if we could get our partners to agree, we could make things better for everybody. But there's that just negotiating within the contract, within the labor agreements. And then within our own policies and practices administratively, what can we do potentially, as we said, changing the schedules, bringing on more limited duty positions, making that available. So I think staff, we can come back to your board in a few months with a work plan of things to consider and what it is we're working on, because there's no silver bullet for this. This is going to take a lot of effort at a lot of different levels. And as you mentioned, it's not just an issue with MST, it's statewide, nationally, an issue as well. So, we can continue to come back and define that better for your board as far as what we think are the lower hanging fruit and what's going to be the more difficult things for us to accomplish.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Carl, for that. I think that's a great idea, being able to look at that. I know, well, and let me just make sure I have just my final comments on that, but I want to make sure any of the directors that are in the boardroom, is there any other comments?
Yes, this is Visser. Just a few remarks. For me, it was really very concerning to read that 43% of transit workers are over 55. The report already includes many good suggestions, I think, to change things. But just one more remark. When I read about where practicable, agencies ought to explore changing their processes for rostering to improve the schedules of newer workers, I hope it also includes the schedules of existing workers to improve that, so that you don't
Yeah.
get it. Yeah.
I think under a union agreement, we would absolutely need to protect the existing workers before we improve the newer workers.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for that comment. Carl, anyone else?
Just this is Paduri. Thank you, Chair. Just for my clarification, is MST, I mean, this report is more at a national level, but is MST also in the same kind of situation where you have retirees making up 24%? I mean, or somewhere like that number? That seems really high.
Well, it's due to the aging workforce. So there is a mass exodus that's happening due to just the aging workforce. What tended to happen in transportation, and I'll try to be really brief, so I apologize, but transportation drivers tend to be a second career. So that's why you have an older workforce, particularly here in Monterey County, because a lot of our drivers, when I first came on almost 20 years ago, were ex-military. From the closing of Fort Ord. So all of them have been retiring. And so that's what you're seeing. To compound that, CalPERS has put out, I would say, misinformation that has characterized retirees or scared retirees from taking any work outside of their retirement because they're afraid they might lose their retirement. But there's ways around that an individual who's a CalPERS retiree could actually still come to another CalPERS agency and not jeopardize their retirement.
Yeah, we have found that to be a real problematic. We've attempted to get former employees to come back on a part-time basis, and they are scared. And they don't trust us when we say, no, you can do it this way, but CalPERS is putting out, Kelly, I think accurately puts it. It's not accurate information, and it's working to our detriment. So maybe that's something we can work at the state level to see if they can be put out better information so that workers in their retirement may want to take on part-time work.
Yeah, and that's great. I think that's something we should explore probably. And the other thing is for newer workers, one of the things that we see from a city perspective is really location. I mean, folks do not want to come here because they cannot afford to live here. Does MST have a similar kind of like stat or no?
I would say yes, not necessarily on the driver's side or the mechanic side, because typically you are recruiting from your own area, or a little bit further out, but it's definitely somewhat of a hindrance on the management and upper levels.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Director Paduri, for those comments. Okay, Carl, anyone else? So I can make my final remarks and we can move forward.
I think we're ready.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And I just on a couple of what was already commented, I know on the report, it does talk about, obviously, as Kelly said, the exodus of the older workforce, the aging workforce, and really striving to look at the newer workforce. And I know, obviously, we talked about Hartnell College. You gave us some information already in terms of what you're doing at the state level to be able to bypass some of those policies that take a long time. But one of the suggestions is also working with apprenticeships and with internships and really doing work at the high school level. So as you come back and providing the report is ways of how we can start making some of those connections as well. I know that we work in the schools already because it's part of the marketing and part of the awareness, but really looking at establishing some pipeline early on as well and working with our local high schools.
And that is something, just real quick, we are looking at finding, like, can we lower the age for a federal, commercial driver's license from 21 to 19? And make driving jobs available to younger people as a potential. I think Mr. Pacheco had his hand up. I'm sorry, I didn't see that earlier.
Just to make sure, it's probably not possible for your new employees or younger employees that want jobs. You probably can't offer incentives for them to work the unique hours or weekends or holidays, or as far as incentives. I guess that's one question. And you mentioned that you're reaching out to Hartnell College. Are you also reaching out to Monterey Peninsula College at the same interest level or lack thereof?
I'll take the incentives. There is stuff within the CBA that provides some incentives for night differentials. I believe that's in Article 18 or 16. So there is some stuff in there. As far as there's a lot of work that we've done with Hartnell because they're the most open to having those conversations. MPC, when we've approached them in the past, and that doesn't mean we can't do it again, they don't have as much interest as what Hartnell does. Hartnell actually has started a program where they are going into the local high schools and having conversations about workforce development. And we have partnered with them as well as other agencies in the area to accompany them into these conversations. So we've started that work, but we can definitely make the approach with MPC again and see where they're at, and try to tap into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, directors, for that. And in the interest of time, I know it's 11:41 already, and we have a couple of more items on the agenda. Just to wrap this up, is there any final, final comments that haven't been made already? If not, as was discussed, the team will MST will bring this back to us to look at what we're doing already to be able to address the worker shortage, and then obviously what we're doing in terms of some of the recommendations that were presented on the report as well, on the executive summary. So any final burning comments? If not, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Last item is monthly board reports. Doesn't necessarily need monthly. It could be quarterly or other board reports. But MST has been providing very detailed information to your board. And this information hasn't changed much in the 20 years I've been here. We've changed the format a little bit in giving you dashboards that provide some graphical representations with some ranges that we want to be operating within. For I apologize for your new board members, you don't have a copy of those monthly reports as part of this month's packet because we will be issuing those next month with the regular board member packet. But for those who are familiar with it, it's frankly very ridership driven, very much driven by efficiency standards. Are we meeting passenger per hour requirements, fare box standards that are we complying with state laws as far as how much money we're supposed to be providing, getting from the passengers in fares, cost. There are various grant sources from state levels that require your costs not to exceed a certain level, otherwise you lose some of the flexibility. So the reporting has really been to your board around providing information around, is MST doing what it's supposed to be doing according to its funding providers and growing ridership at the same time. There's been some new schools of thought about our industry and what policy boards such as yourselves should be looking at, and is ridership the be all and end all of what we do in our community. We found out during COVID that while our ridership was low and below all of our standards and our costs per passenger were way out of standard, we were still doing good things in the community for the million or so that continued to use transit because they were dependent upon it. And our industry, that story was played out all over the country, if not all over the world. And that has caused many policy boards to consider whether strictly reporting these efficiency and effectiveness ratios, ridership ratios, very businesslike. Is there something more you're interested in finding out? Are you interested in finding out the number of persons we're carrying in disadvantaged neighborhoods? Is there, or are all riders equal? Is a rider, or is, from your board's perspective, do we want to pay more attention to ridership in certain areas or certain types of riders? Are you interested in how much impact we're having on climate change and our reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as we implement new programs? Are there reports like that that are more less financial, less efficiency oriented, but more, I think, softer, but still may be of importance to you as policymakers in getting that information? If the answer is yes, then staff is suggesting a subcommittee of the board and staff sit down and start crafting what some of these ratios might be. There was a session that your board chair and I attended at the California Transit Association conference, and Scott can throw up a slide from that that speaks to some of what others are looking at in our industry. This is very, it's not a lot, but these are the types of, in this case, they're looking at customer, community, and taxpayer and economic impact. What sort of money are we spending in our community? What sort of, how are we influencing and creating jobs in the community based on the resources we bring in and spend in the community? Productivity, there's, climate, are there health impacts that we can measure, equity impacts, traffic congestion? These are types of things that are kind of outside the typical what we've been reporting to you forever about ridership and fare box and cost per hour, riders per hour. So that's the question here. Does your board want us to start looking at this? Do any member of this board want to participate in that process? And the timeline that we would like to look for is when we start reporting results for the beginning of the new fiscal year, starting July 1. Generally, we would be reporting that at the September meeting. We'd have the results for July. So we would like to start now, because if there's going to be a new reporting that your board wants to see, we want to start working on that now so that we can present that beginning in a new fiscal year, a new reporting subject. So that is the purpose of this item, is A, do we need to change anything? If not, we don't move forward. B, yeah, there's things that we'd like to look at. And these are some of the things I'd be interested in looking at. And C, not only that, I'd be interested in participating in a subcommittee of the board at some later date to work with staff on what it is we can do. That's the summation of this item. Be happy to hear any comments or thoughts from your board.
Thank you, Carl, for providing that information. So before I open it up to comments from the directors, I just want to say, just to echo what Carl mentioned, and I know what you're seeing on front of the screen obviously has a lot of different values, but I think what we've heard in the conference that we attended in Seattle and also in Ontario, as was mentioned, is really tying how critical transit is. And we know how critical it is, obviously, to our community members, but being able to have some metrics in terms of tying it back to our community value and what does that look like? I know we obviously all get the reports, and financial is really imperative because we want to make sure that that's sustainable, and some of the other reports that we get. But I think what I really came to understand is, how do we really vocalize that community value? How do we share that community value that not just ties us to a financial, but also is able for us as directors sitting on this board, able to give us tools that has data behind it of what are these community, what does transit do in terms of the community values, right? And what are those performance metrics and business indicators that we can add to the existing report or modify to be able to help us better share our stories as directors, but also better share our stories when we're talking to our legislators in terms of how critical transit is for our population, for our cities, for our residents, and what is that value attributed to? I mean, access to education, access to healthcare, access to jobs, obviously all have an economic impact, but really being able to dissect that a little bit more and really looking at the human impact. As Carl said, we have an opportunity to be able to go back. I'd be happy to be part of that ad hoc committee and working with whoever else is interested in trying to be able to look at, what are some of the other models that exist, because there are other models that exist, and what is relevant for us, what can we come back to recommend to the board to adopt for at a later time. So with that, I will open it up to questions, and I do see that Director Labar has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. And I found this portion very interesting. I do like our dashboard the way we have it now, provides good relevant information. What I think I would like is definitely once a year, I would like to hear what businesses we're supporting locally. I think it'd be a good opportunity to talk about, greenhouse emissions for the prior year, and then opportunities for community businesses or for community members to engage. So I believe one of the biggest things that we can do is the dollars that we receive as a transit agency is when we invest in local companies for the goods and services we need, because that supports us all. So I would like to see that at least, once a year. And time-wise would be, as you just mentioned, Chair, the ability to communicate these things to our legislators. So whenever that would be most beneficial to get that information. So as we have our talk with our legislators, we can definitely push that forward, that we're helping, 20 businesses with things that we're buying locally. Those are things that would be important for me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Labar. That's noted. Yeah, thank you for that. So I'll turn it over now to Director Pacheco and then Director Barron. Okay, Director Pacheco, you're on mute.
On the areas of connectivity and equity, would that help us better understand who our market is and better potentially teach us or showcase us how we can better reach out to those that we are not serving or those that we are serving in a better way? And finally, I agree the information that we currently receive is good. I just find if we're going to improve our marketing, maybe we need more information as far as who we're serving and how we can serve them better and reach out to that group better as well. Because that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Pacheco. So I'll just say in terms of the marketing piece, and obviously if we receive some of that information already, there is room for improvement in looking at how we get that data in terms of the marketing piece, correct? Because I know that we have in our reports of social media and some of the other marketing outreach efforts that are being conducted, but to be able to include who are we reaching and who are we not, or the potential of reaching other groups that we may not be reaching out to. So thank you for that. So Director Barron.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really particularly fascinated by this, and in particular the congestion and equity pieces of these reports. And I think that those two items go straight to the heart of the services that we provide as a transit organization. And I would really be interested in helping out and trying to flesh out those two things.
Thank you, Director Barron, for that. And absolutely, I think that equity piece is what we've been hearing throughout the last couple of conferences. And if we can include that and look at what data points we need to be able to add that, and especially as we've transitioned to this Better Bus Network, I think we're going to need, different metrics than what we currently have to be able to look at if it's working, if it's not. And what can we do differently? So thank you so do I hear you volunteering to be part of the subcommittee to look at this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that. Okay, any other directors? Okay, and I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Michael Barr's hand is still raised. I'm not sure if he's.
I just raised it again, Chair. I just wanted, you would include under the community portion somehow how much money that we're spending in our local businesses?
Yeah, no, I've got that written.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be impact. So I think that would go under also the community impacts and kind of outlining what portions of those impacts. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Community relevance. Yep. Any other comments?
Just something that staff is thinking about doing is currently we do a biennially, every 2 years, we do a outreach to our passengers, intercept studies or intercept surveys where we're at the transit stations talking to people on the bus, and we get really good, demographic information on what do they like, what don't they like. And that's great at that snapshot point in time, but staff is considering, is there a way to use some of our apps and other information to do surveys, that I think we all see now private companies doing, and can we supplement that data coming from at least customers who are using our apps and that sort of thing to help us get ahead of some of the thoughts that are going on in the minds of our customers with regard to their level of satisfaction with the service. So more on that to come, and that might be part of this as well. And staff also in recent years has invested money in GIS packages that help us get down to very granular data about the demographics of where we serve and where our bus stops are located, so that we'll be able to see how many boardings are in neighborhoods that have low car ownership, or how many boardings are in neighborhoods that have high levels of poverty. So we can start to, I'm going to say prior to COVID, we didn't have that data set, and we do now. So it'll be interesting working with this subcommittee to find out what's available to you, because there are more tools that we have than we had before that we want to learn how to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Carl. And we've been hearing that. So thank you for allowing the opportunity for us to really look at our metrics and how we can improve those to really quantify the impacts of transit. We know it, but can we share it in a different manner than what we're currently sharing? So I appreciate that opportunity. So as of now, just so we can conclude this item and move on, We do have under the subcommittee, then it'll be myself and I'll be working with Director Barron. And if there's someone else that you might not think about it, and if there's any of the directors that want to be part of this a working subcommittee, then please reach out to Carl and let us know.
Delray Oaks isn't here, so we can appoint them.
So we can assign them, right? Because they're not here.
Yes, yes, thank you, Carl. I would be interested in being on that committee, and I think that Carl brought up a good point regarding apps, following up with our contactless service, the tap-on service with the customers, with our bus riders. And that was it.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice Chair Carbone. So we have, as part of our subcommittee working group, then it'll be myself, Director Barron, and Vice Chair Carbone. Thank you so much. We look forward to exploring this more and then bringing back information to the full committee. Okay, so as we are now a minute away from 12, we are going to move into our next item, which is our reports and information items. Item A-1, there was correspondence on the board appointments. You have that on in your board. Unless there's any questions, we'll move on to Carl. We don't need to any discussion on this item, correct?
Correct. Just
Okay.
if you have questions.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is item number 9, board reports, comments, and referrals. And this is in regards to reports of meetings attended by board members on MST expense under AB 1234. And I do have a report, Carl, and it's a written report, and I apologize for not submitting it on time, but this is in regards to the California Transit Association, our 57th annual conference and expo that was held in November of 2022, November 16th through the 18th. So I'm just going to go through it really quick, and then I'll submit it so the board can see also for the next agenda. So as was mentioned, there was a lot of information in regards to rebuilding ridership and enhancing the customer experience. So we were able to hear from different transit agencies in regards to their implementation. One, LA Metro talked about the kids' right for free fare. Then also MST staff during this conference some of our staff were also panelists on some of these workshops. I attended the how to implement the ZEB transition plan. So as we talked about, these are emergency technologies in terms of implementation and looking at plug power that produces green hydrogen. And so looking at those kind of future mechanisms. I also attended the Small Operators Award Program breakfast, where MST received the Small Operators Transit Innovation Award for partnering with Cal ITP for the contactless fare payment technology. So congratulations to MST for that. And we did have our keynote was Tony Tavares, who is a director of the California Department of Transportation, who was appointed to this position in June of 2022, and then attended the Impacting Employees Resilience and Workshop. So this, again, discussion in terms of productivity and success in the workforce. And then attended the workshops on telling transit's new story with nationalized data. And this is part of the discussion that we're having here today, is how can we really redefine how we share our success, excuse me, our stories of success and the need for transit within our communities and for our customers. So I'll make sure that I submit this for our next report. So with that, I don't know if there's any other directors that have any reporting under this category.
Through the chair, Director Carbone and I have submitted a written report last month, I believe.
Right, and we'll include that in the February agenda under the reports item.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to the next items are the board member comments and announcements. So at this point, is there any comments and announcements from our directors? Okay, I do see Director Alejo.
Yes, Madam Chair. Sorry, I wanted to say some words when Carl Sador gave his report earlier, but we're having to take calls because of the emergencies. But I wanted to thank Carl and all the team of heroic drivers that are helping with the transportation of folks. And I think most of the folks, if they need it, they're calling 211 to be evacuated. But today will be a worst case scenario in many areas throughout Monterey County, and of course in the adjacent Santa Cruz County and Pajaro. So Carl, I want to thank your team for really stepping up in a big way. The community has really appreciated having that available to them. The only question was for the transportation MST is providing for evacuation. Will that be only for shelter sites in Monterey County, or would they be providing that as well to the Santa Cruz County Fairgrounds in Watsonville? Was a question I got, and I thought I would just get clarity from MST on it.
We certainly have the ability, if we're requested by OES or the sheriffs to take people to the Santa Cruz Fairgrounds, we can do that.
Okay, great. And the reason I was asking is because the main entrance to the fairgrounds is flooded on Holohan and East Lake, and so there's an alternative route, and so that's where maybe transit might be able to help facilitate getting a larger number of people through the back ways because of the problems through the main entrance. But thanks to everyone. Thanks to all the MST staff and drivers.
Talk to each other. We're good.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. And this is another example of MST really stepping up when there's a big need. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Director Alejo, and thank you also to the county and all of your staff as well, because they're doing an amazing job just working through all of the different evacuations and all of the different damages related to the storm. So thank you for that. And yeah, we concur. Thank you to MST for what they're doing. So under this section, just an announcement. I think everybody saw it. SB 922 community planning meetings are upcoming February 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Lisa, did you want to just provide a little more information on that so we know what that means?
Sure, it is a little cryptic. Lisa Reinheimer, Assistant General Manager. I failed to mention that earlier. We will be having community planning meetings on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of February. The first one on the 13th will be at the Marina Library. And then the other two we're still trying to nail down, but we think they'll be at the Montage Health Center at the Dunes in Marina as well. And those are for the additional exemption for the Surf Busway and BRT project. SB 922 went into effect this 9 days ago on the 1st of this year. And it provides for additional exemptions that MST may claim on the Surf Busway and BRT project as it relates to CEQA. So those community meetings are required to further make that claim under the exemption, and then the board would have an opportunity to take action upon that in March.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for that clarification. So we'll move on to our next item, which is board members' referrals for future agendas. At this time, do any board of directors have any referrals for future agenda items?
Through the chair, if I could also make a comment through board comments, and that is that I just wanted to point out that the Monterey Fairgrounds did open last night for shelter for anyone who is in need of a place to stay, as well as the various local libraries throughout the counties, and that information can be found through the county.
Thank you, Vice Chair Carbone, as well as I know that the same in King City, we have two sites, the rec center and also the library on a limited hour basis. Okay, so seeing no other comments, there is no attachments under item 10. And at this time, then if there's no other further items of business, we adjourn this meeting at 12:07. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 13th at 10 a.m. And just want to say to all the board of directors again, Happy New Year. I know we're entering into a new year with these winter storms, so please stay safe and continue to work together for the safety of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, I think, did your father read this? Yes.